Hong Kong.
Meanwhile, Beijing has slammed the U.S. House of Representatives over its treatment of the Hong Kong protests. The lower house of America's Congress passed a number of bills this week related to the city, frustrating the Chinese government. A Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson said China would do all it can to safeguard the country's sovereignty. Jim Spillman has more.
The U.S. House of Representatives passed several bills regarding Hong Kong Tuesday. One is known as the Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act. It would require the U.S. State Department to assess annually whether Hong Kong is sufficiently autonomous from Beijing. If Washington concludes it's not, the U.S. could suspend special economic and trade concessions Hong Kong has received from the U.S. since the 1990s. The measure would also allow those arrested for participating in nonviolent protests to receive visas to travel to the United States. The House also passed the Protect Hong Kong Act. This would bar U.S. firms from selling products to the Hong Kong police that might be used against protesters. This includes items like tear gas and rubber bullets. Both bills will need to make it through the U.S. Senate and be signed by President Trump before becoming law. Protesters in Hong Kong have pushed for these laws over objections from the SAR and Beijing. It's not clear what the immediate impact might be if these bills become law. Some businesses fear they could create uncertainty for investors and further damage Hong Kong's business-friendly reputation. Businesses have already suffered from months of protests. China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs has repeatedly condemned the U.S. legislation.
We strongly oppose the U.S. Congress's decision on passing the so-called Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act. We responded to the issue this morning, and here I'd like to reiterate that in response to the wrong decision the U.S. has made and its damage to China's interests, we'll take powerful countermeasures to firmly safeguard the security of our sovereignty and our interests.
The House also passed a largely symbolic resolution supporting the rights of protesters in Hong Kong. Jim Spellman, CGTN, Washington.
And some discussions on Hong Kong. We're now joined live by Lawrence Ma in Hong Kong. He's the Executive Council Chairman of the Hong Kong Legal Exchange Foundation. So, Lawrence, to what extent do you think the legislation by the U.S. House will affect Hong Kong?
Well, firstly, this is an amendment to the original 1992 Hong Kong Policy Act. Now, the Hong Kong Policy Act gives Hong Kong a special economic status and gives a lot of import quotas. However, Hong Kong's manufacturing business has been doing away since China has been taken up as the world's manufacturing country. So these, even there's a cutoff of any import quotas, it wouldn't affect Hong Kong's economy a lot because we don't have much manufacturing business in Hong Kong. So that wouldn't affect Hong Kong's economy. That's the first point. The second point is the new act actually created a blacklist, which by the president having credible information that officials in Hong Kong who has allowed fugitives in Hong Kong to be conveyed or sent back to the mainland China for trial for a criminal offense, those officials would be enlisted in a blacklist. However, as we all understand, the Fugitive Amendment Ordinance has been fully withdrawn by the current government because the protesters was really up against this Fugitive Amendment Ordinance. This ordinance is no longer to have any effect. So as a result, under the current law, there could not be any Hong Kong officials or mainland officials who would be liable to be enlisted in a blacklist because there wouldn't be any extradition at all from Hong Kong SAR to the mainland. So this I would conclude that this act is a red herring, is a political red herring, which the American is trying to influence the internal politics of Hong Kong and try to affect adversely affect the central government of PRC.
Let's turn to Carrie Lam's policy. She announced her policy report. She promised that it will make more policies to provide housing and land. But do you think she will be able to deliver on that, considering so much blowback from other political forces?
I think with respect to housings, I can, at least because she would be giving 10,000 units for transitional housing, and 12,000 units under the home ownership scheme. So those units will be available because they were either under construction or readily available after resumption of land. So giving away flats and accommodations to put people in need would not be a difficulty. The star point, if you read carefully, and one of the major attraction of this policy address with respect to housing is that people can now borrow up to 90% from a bank to buy a private property. Because as you understand, Hong Kong people could not borrow more than 50% to buy from a loan from a bank, to obtain a loan from a bank. So I mean, now the cap has been lifted to allow people to borrow up to 90% of the value of the flat if the flat is at a maximum of $8 million. And do you think, it really helped people to acquire properties.
And do you think these policies will win her more popular support, which is very important for her at the moment?
I think it will win a lot of middle-class support, but many of these protesters, they are not middle class, they are below middle class. And many of them, even when they complain that they don't have a property to live in, they do have a place to live in, they do have a flat to live in. What they're really complaining of is the lack of wealth, which no government could really help a wealth building of an individual citizen.
All right. Thank you very much, Lawrence, for your perspective.